You're not like them. And deep down, you've always known. There's something about how you move through the world, quiet, observant, withdrawn, that unsettles people who never stop talking. You don't chase validation. You don't crave attention. And it's not because you're shy or insecure. It's because the world outside feels off. You walk into a room and immediately sense what others can't even name. The tension beneath fake smiles. The exhaustion hiding behind loud laughter. The hollowness wrapped in shiny social rituals. It doesn't just tire you. It disgusts you. Not in a judgmental way, but in a physical, visceral way. The sound of meaningless chatter, the forced hugs, the last-minute plans that feel more like an obligation than an invitation. It all makes your body reject it. Like your nervous system already knows, this isn't where you belong. And here's the part most people will never say out loud: you're not alone. There are others like you. People who've tried to play along, to smile on cue, to be normal, only to feel emptier with every step they take away from themselves. People who find crowds suffocating, small talk intolerable, and parties exhausting. Not because they hate people, but because they sense things too deeply. They see through masks too quickly. They know that behind the celebration is often desperation, and behind the performance, a deep fear of silence. These are people who would rather sit in the quiet than pretend to enjoy noise, who crave depth, not distraction, who see through the artificial and long for something real, but society doesn't know what to do with them. So it labels them antisocial, introverted, cold, distant, as if their solitude is a sickness instead of a sign. Because when you start choosing your peace over participation, people get uncomfortable. When you prefer staying home over going out, they treat it like a problem to fix. You need fresh air. You're isolating yourself. You should go out more. As if your sanctuary is a prison. But what if it's not? What if your home isn't a retreat from the world, but a return to yourself? What if silence isn't an escape, but a doorway? What if, while everyone else chases the next distraction, you've chosen to listen? Not to the world, but to something deeper, something internal, something ancient. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't romanticize it. He said the truth as it is. He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes. But awakening is not a pretty process. It's not comfortable. It's not inspirational quotes and meditation music. It's brutal. It's raw. It breaks you before it builds you. It strips away everything you were told to be and forces you to confront what you really are. And that's why most people run. That's why they bury themselves in noise, because silence begins to whisper the truth. And the truth terrifies them. But not you. You've heard that whisper. You've sat in rooms where no one else is and felt something stirring, something real, something unexplainable. You've felt the friction of trying to fit into a world that doesn't feel right, and you've stopped trying. You've accepted the discomfort of solitude, not as a curse, but as a compass. Because out there, everything cuts. The noise slices into your thoughts. The expectations weigh on your chest. The fake energy drains your soul. And every time you return to your own space, you feel whole again. You're not hiding. You're healing. You're not escaping. You're aligning. You're not rejecting the world. The world is rejecting truth, and you refuse to pretend with it. And here's where things get even more disturbing for them. You've realized something most haven't. That your solitude isn't a phase. It's not temporary. It's not something to fix. It's your natural state. It's your power. And once you've tasted it, once you've seen how deep the stillness can go, there's no going back. No crowd can offer you what one honest moment alone can. No approval can compare to the calm of knowing you've stopped lying to yourself. And that changes everything. But now that you've seen yourself clearly, it's time to look at the others. Not to judge them, but to understand what your solitude exposes. Have you noticed how some people panic when they're not busy? How they get agitated if their phone doesn't ring? How they feel lost without weekend plans, social updates, endless noise? That's not just personality, that's avoidance. Because if they stop moving, the silence begins to echo. And in that echo, something starts to scream. A voice they've spent their whole lives silencing. The one that says, "You're not okay. You don't love yourself. You don't even know who you are." Jung said it in terrifying clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's what's happening out there. People who are living their best life aren't really living, they're running. From what? From themselves. From the parts of them they're too afraid to face. So they overschedule, overshare, overparty, overconsume anything to drown out that voice inside. Because silence is not peace for them. It's confrontation. It's a mirror. And most can't stand their own reflection. But you've faced it. You've endured the silence. You've stared into the mirror and stayed. You've heard your thoughts echo off the walls and didn't run. And that makes you rare. It makes you powerful. It makes you unshakable. Because someone who doesn't need the world cannot be controlled by it. They can't be guilt-tripped into conformity. They can't be bought with popularity. They can't be manipulated with fear of missing out. Because they're not missing anything. They're finally present, not out there, but in here. And here comes the next revelation, the one that breaks the system entirely. Most people don't really choose solitude. They endure it with bitterness. But you choose it. And that choice rewrites everything. You don't stay home because you have nowhere to go. You stay home because you no longer need to go anywhere to feel alive. You don't isolate because you're afraid. You disconnect because you're in tune. You're not hiding from life. You've found a version of life that doesn't require performance. And that scares people. It shakes them. So they label you weird, reclusive, antisocial. But what they're really saying is, you've done something I haven't dared to do. You've faced your own soul and didn't shatter. And that's a quiet rebellion. That's a spiritual uprising. Because when you no longer need the crowd, you're free from its expectations. When you no longer seek approval, you're free to be real. And when you finally understand that solitude isn't loneliness, it's liberation, that's when everything begins to change. You start to see that this isn't just a preference or a personality trait. It's a path, a return, a kind of remembering, because before the world told you who to be, you already knew. You already had a rhythm, a silence, a presence that didn't need to be explained. And in your solitude, you found it again. Not by escaping the world, but by walking away from the version of yourself the world tried to force on you. And now that you're here, standing in that quiet truth, ask yourself, was it really ever about being social, or was it about being real? Was it ever about fitting in, or was it about finally being free? Because once you've tasted your own peace, everything else becomes noise. And now that you've arrived here beyond the noise, beyond the need to explain yourself, you begin to see it, all of it, with sharp, unapologetic clarity. You see that your way of living isn't just a preference. It's a form of resistance, a rebellion not marked by noise or fire, but by stillness. Because what you've done, most people never dare to even consider. You've stepped out of the stream. You've stopped running. You've stopped performing. While the world pushes everyone to be present, available, active, validated, you went in the opposite direction. Not to run away, but to come back to something sacred, to yourself. Think about it. This world runs on distraction. Everything is designed to keep you from pausing, from thinking, from feeling. Notifications, social media, forced obligations, constant content. It's not just entertainment. It's seduction. It's control. Because the moment you stop and sit with your own mind, something dangerous happens. You begin to see, to question, to realize that so much of what we're told is necessary isn't. That so much of what we're told is true falls apart when placed under the quiet light of honest reflection. And that realization, that awakening, threatens the system. Because a person who finds value in silence, in simplicity, in presence, is a person who can no longer be bought. A person who no longer seeks escape is a person who has already escaped the trap. You've disconnected. And that decision, though silent, sends shockwaves, because the system needs you to keep moving, to keep consuming, to keep proving your worth through visibility. But you don't. You found a rhythm that has nothing to do with speed, a frequency that doesn't match the crowd. And now, something ancient awakens in you. Intuition. That voice no one else can teach you. The one that's always been there, beneath the layers, waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear it. And when it begins to speak, you realize why so many are terrified of stillness. Because stillness reveals. It reveals that not everyone who smiles is happy. that not everyone who speaks knows what they're saying, that not everyone who leads is going somewhere worth following. And with every new insight, your solitude shifts. It no longer feels like a shell. It becomes a cradle, a womb, a sacred space where truth is born. While others are running to feel alive, you are building yourself from the inside out. No filters, no witnesses, just clarity, just raw honesty. And that is something most people can't stand. Because when you are calm in a chaotic world, you become a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable. Your peace disturbs them because it forces them to confront their restlessness. Your contentment makes their performance feel hollow. Your refusal to explain yourself exposes how much they still need validation. And that's when it begins, the cutting. You start cutting ties not in anger, but in truth. Conversations that once felt necessary now feel exhausting. Environments that used to entertain now feel toxic. Obligations that once pulled you in now feel like chains. And without making noise, without seeking revenge, you start walking away, quietly, powerfully. People notice. They feel it. They don't always understand it, but they sense the difference. And some distance themselves. Some label you. Some call you cold. But deep down, something in them knows they're not watching someone break down. They're watching someone break free. You've stopped explaining your solitude. You've stopped apologizing for needing space. Because what you've realized is this: inner life is not negotiable. And once someone has built a home inside themselves, they never beg for company again. And the deeper you go, the less you tolerate anything that isn't real. Fakeness becomes unbearable. Surface-level talk feels like sandpaper on your mind. You start craving depth, not just in others, but in everything, in how you live, in how you breathe, in how you choose. And this is where the world starts calling it a problem, because you're not playing the game anymore. You're not chasing what they chase. And that makes you unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. Because your worth is no longer tied to being seen. It's tied to being whole. And Jung understood this transformation. He called it the retreat of the soul, not as defeat but as preparation for rebirth. Because the soul withdraws not to run away but to reorganize, to burn away what is false, to return with clarity. And that's where you are. That's what this solitude has been preparing you for. A version of you that doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. That doesn't need applause or attention or proof. A version that doesn't seek because it is. That stands alone and yet lacks nothing. And now we get to a truth no one wants to talk about. Your isolation. It's not really isolation, it's selection. You're not avoiding people, you're choosing your frequency. You're filtering the energy you allow in. You're deciding consciously who and what deserves access to your space. And that is not weakness. That is power. That is evolution. And it's not loud. It doesn't post. It doesn't announce itself. It simply grows in the background, stronger, clearer, unshakable. And the more you lean into this, the more you begin to understand something most never will, that your peace is sacred, that your space is holy. And that your solitude is not something to overcome, it's something to protect. And the world may never get it. They may never understand why you'd rather spend a night with your thoughts than at a crowded event. Why you'd rather sit in stillness than talk for the sake of noise. Why you'd rather go inward than outward. But you do. You understand. Because in your solitude you found something rare. Something unteachable. Something real. And now, every time the world tries to pull you back into its rhythm, into its expectations, you feel it more sharply. The disconnect, the falseness, the pressure to return to a life that never truly felt like yours. And with that recognition, something irreversible happens. You stop needing to explain. You stop needing to prove. You stop needing to belong, because you already do. You belong to yourself. And that, right there, is your power. A power that doesn't shout. A power that doesn't beg. A power that stands quietly, firmly, with open eyes and a full heart and needs no one to feel complete. So when they ask you why you don't go out more, why you stay home so much, why you don't participate like normal people, don't defend yourself. Don't justify. Just smile. Because the truth is, they're still searching for something you've already found. They're still chasing something you've already become. And that thing, that space, that stillness, it's you.